our daily Bible study. Today we're going to continue on in the 8th segment entitled Understanding Fear. We will now continue with the series where we are now investigating definitive terms for fear. This is our 5th installment and the 4th part of terms for fear. So let's dive right in. The next term we want to deal with, and again remember these are definitive terms and this is a definitive study. There are many different types of study that can be implemented. One definitive, one a word study, one a philosophical study, one is an exegetical or expositional study, an analytical study, or an observational study where you are trying to get results and so forth. And so there are many different terms and many different types of study. And so we're going to continue with this definitive study. Our next word is the word karada. And this term deals with the word that explicably brings to mind an understanding of fear and anxiety or care. And when we speak of care, we're not talking about the type of care where a person cares for someone else, but it is a care that is a concern, and it's an ever-increasing concern that causes exceedingly great fear, quaking, or trembling. As we go a little further, trying to understand the terminology, from the ancient Hebrew, the word karada simply means to tremble, and it can deal with a burning or something that is so insightful that it causes trembling. And so it means to be afraid, to tremble, to fray carefully, to be discomfited, and also to quake. It can also have an indication that something trembles out of being fearful of what is coming. And so it can deal with experiential knowledge from the past, where an individual has experienced something to a great degree, where they comprehend that this same experience or this same confrontation may yield a similar or perhaps the very same results from the past. The word karada means again an anxiety, quaking, trembling, a trembling or a quaking or having an anxious care. When we go down and we begin to look at it from another perspective, the word study, it is a noun meaning trembling, quaking, fear. This trembling is often brought on by acts of God. It is the terror of God that overcame the enemy. In other words, it can be elicited as a reverential fear by seeing God, or it can be a quaking fear because of the awesomeness of something that is coming to you, something that inspires fear, something that you know you have no way in heaven or in earth of dealing with. And so it can deal with reverential fear or fear that is inspired because of the awesomeness of a certain thing, certain person, or a specific situation. I want to go a little further as we continue the investigation of fear, and this is another Hebrew term, and it's very important that we again begin to address and understand these terminologies as being terms of Scripture for fear. When we look at this term, and I'm pulling it up on the screen, it is a word that is simply pronounced as koth. Koth. The term koth then means crushed, or also afraid, and abstractly it can deal with terror or broken, or one who is dismayed. And so when we talk about crushed, that means totally defeated and rendered powerless to move, to decide, or to even combat what's coming. A crushing fear is a fear of defeat. It is a fear of so much absolute apprehension because you've literally been brought to your lowest point, or to a point where you feel is your lowest point. When we look at the terminology again, it can mean terror, it can mean being shattered, dismayed, or brought again to a mental persuasion of defeat. When we look at the ancient Hebrew, it's an action or a person that is broken in terror. It deals with one who, because they are broken, they are rendered sometimes unable to move, unable to think, or having no desire to do so. And it can also bring such a fear that one despises the thing. They hate it, they despise it, but yet they are crushed by the overwhelming impact of this thing. If we take it a little further, it describes extreme dread. It describes extreme fear the animals have for humans after the flood. It also is an emotion unknown to Job's Leviathan. And so it speaks of fear that is common to knowledge of circumstances of affliction, of conflict, and so it's identified with something as broken, dismayed, terrified. And so it refers to the bowels of a mighty as broken, a ship that has been crushed in, a ship where the bottom of the boat has been broken, and now the surges of water flood in. And the more the water floods in, the lower the ship begins to sink. And so fear of this type is a fear that humbles. It is a fear that makes one cower. It is a fear of dread where an individual experiences emotions, and these emotions cause them to shake, to lower themselves, to sink. And so it is a fear that is incapacitating. It is a fear that causes individuals to hesitate or to draw back. Now keep in mind, these types of fears typically, and more often than not, operate in the natural realm. And in the natural realm, these fears can negate the spirit. They can negate our faith. And there are even types of fears that in the physiology, because the brain and the mind are connected together, they can literally hijack what we call the amygdala. And the amygdala will literally hijack common sense. It will hijack your intellect. It will hijack your will. And this is one of the major fears that will produce what I call the 4 F's: fight, flight, freeze, and faint. And so fear then, if it's stimulated in the mind, it can activate a physiological response that causes you to fight or oppose. That fight can also be reject. It can cause us flight, to avoid, to flee from, to not want to face. It can cause you to freeze, to become incapacitated, unable to use your will to make a decision. And then sometimes fear is so overwhelming that individuals go into shock and literally pass out. I thank you for joining me. I am your host, Dr. Derek A. Reeves, and this is our daily Bible study. We welcome you, and until next time, God bless and God keep you.